Teresa Norton, and I want to welcome you to The View from a Broad. I'm the Broad, and this is the podcast, which is now going into its second season. I'm so thrilled. And my guest today is sustainable fashion consultant Sulakshana Chemudupati. And after 10 years living and working in Dubai, she now splits her time between India and Portugal, where I met her in Lisbon. I met her when she was a panelist on at an art exhibition. She's often asked to speak about the role of sustainability in fashion, and I know that she's very passionate about indigenous wisdom and conscious design and a reference to circular practices, which I'm sure we'll hear more about when we talk to her. But let's get to the columns. You know, I sent her a selection of them, and she chose a column that I wrote 30 years ago when I was living in Hong Kong that was not the one about fashion, but this one, Keepin' the Faith in a Big City. I don't know, maybe I'm nuts, but when I read the letters to the editor the other morning, I felt a sense of pride and sadness. The letter was written by a tourist who encountered during her visit to Hong Kong what has been my life experience in this incredible city. The writer noted that a Hong Kong resident had called a friend on a mobile phone to help her locate an antique furniture store. This reminded me of a recent trip to a stationery store near the North Point ferry pier, and the shop owner that led me for 3 blocks to a store that could copy my car key. Or the lady in the grocery store who, seeing me reach for a box of crackers that looked to be on sale, stopped me, saying, "Those ones aren't on sale. It's the wheat and onion ones." And pulling one of the last 4 boxes out of her cart, said, "Here, you can have one of mine." The tourist from Canada mentioned something else that made my feelings of pride more personal. And I shall never forget the kindness and concern of a little Chinese lady who has a candle shop at the entrance to Stanley Market. She witnessed me stumble and fall on a step near her store, then proceeded to bring me inside and rub liniment on my injured leg. "Hey, kids, it's Ruthie. They mentioned Ruthie in the paper today," I shouted from the breakfast table. We first met Ruthie when we moved to Repulse Bay and would poke around Stanley for kids' clothes and a bite of lunch. Visiting her candle shop got to be part of our routine. We'd stop in to chat, and she always had a toffee or a small candle shaped like a jack-o'-lantern or an Easter egg for the kids. Ruthie's shop is in a constant state of reorganization, and she is busy at work every time the kids and I pop around. Well, popped around. We live in Happy Valley now and rarely make it to Stanley. I was asked by a local friend recently if I find it hard living so far away from my relatives. I said that we try to get back to the United States every summer, but that my dear girlfriends here have become the sisters I never had, and that they and their husbands are the closest things to aunties and uncles my children have known. The thing is, these extended families don't seem to have any members much over the age of 45. And this accounts for the sadness I felt when I read the article about our friend Ruthie. In my mind's eye, I can see those cool, papery hands applying a healing salve, rearranging a shelf of cake pans and scented candles, or darting into a bag of toffees. And those hands could be my grandmother's. I am flooded with childhood memories of afternoons spent with my dad's mother, the woman who never let me beat her at Crazy Eights, whom I watched make me a beaver skin and brown velvet hat as I drank milky tea, who made her own gloves by hand and kept them in a hidden compartment in the armrests of a wicker chair in her bedroom. Snatches of her stories come back to me as I write this. "And that doctor asked my mother, 'How long did that little girl live?' And my mother said, 'Why, that little girl's got 2 little girls and a boy of her own. And I won that lamp in a foot race when I was first married. In those days, for a penny, you could get a paper bag about yay big, filled with hard candy or a rope of licorice. Yeah, about yay long.'" She'd put down her sewing and indicate the size of yay with those nimble papery hands. My own mother's hands have that look now, spotted like sand-colored stones, pale blue caterpillar veins resting atop them. Cool, dry, and I'm sure still able to measure exactly how much candy you got for a penny when she was a girl. I miss those hands, the ones my children hold for a fistful of days once a year. Welcome to The View from Abroad. It's so nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Teresa. Likewise, this is something I've never done before, and it's so nice to have like a life and work seamless conversation. I really appreciate it.
I sent you a number of different columns. One of them was about, kind of a funny one about fashion statements taking place in the 90s. But you chose this one. Why did you choose this column?
I think because my life is bigger than fashion. And from a life perspective, this is what stood out to me. And just this whole idea of our experiences coming into a new country and the people that stand out, that's something I still experience on an everyday basis because I still find myself kind of new in Portugal and somehow also new in my country all over again because I was away for 10 years. So
Right.
the stage of life I'm in, this article resonated very strongly with that.
Wonderful. Whereabouts in India did you grow up?
I come from the south of India. It's a city called Hyderabad.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. And then you moved to Dubai. And is that where you started your work in sustainable fashion?
I started my career in fashion in India, actually. I was educated at design school in India, and I just was very, very curious about, getting out of my country, seeing something else. And I was very lucky that I got this opportunity right about then in my mid-20s.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how we personally can take an active role in this, but we'll save that and let's unpack this column. When I reread it, what I hear is the voice of my younger self so passionately in love with Hong Kong and kind of defending it a bit about a bad rap.
Mm,
Because Hong Kong people were kind of, it was the story that most people who came to visit or didn't live there were told was that Hong Kong was like it was all about the money. It
mhm.
was nothing but money, money, money. That's all anybody thought about. And and all of the characters that I describe in that column were local people. It wasn't an expat lady who happened to be in the store and said, "Oh no, don't buy those crackers. No, it was some local lady who saw me thinking that I was buying something on sale and
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I got the bargain that she had been able to avail herself to. So they were just little snippets of that experience. And I mean, as you have lived Dubai, well, India originally, right? India,
Yes.
Dubai, Portugal. What are some what are some bad raps that you think some of those places get? Like what's a notion that people have about India that you would like to dispel?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, the thing about India is actually we have good and bad rap. The good part is that everyone knows India is very welcoming and very warm, and we have a saying in Sanskrit which is Atiti Devo Bhava, which means our guests are equivalent to divine,
Mm,
which means we really like go out of our way in terms of hospitality. But yes, we do have a rapport for being scammers, and if you're a foreigner in India, be careful with your belongings and all of that.
mm.
But I think that, again, we can't generalize because there are parts of India where women are actually, respected in society and considered, we have parts of our Indian society are actually matriarchal. And yes, the thing is, the bad rapport that India has for women's safety and all of that, it does exist, but
Mm.
we can't generalize.
Yeah. Okay, so how about Dubai?
Oh, that's a good one. Dubai again, I think that's another thing that stuck out in the article to me is that I think Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, all of them have that similarity where people go to kind of, find a fortune and again, money. It's all about the money. And in Dubai also there's a big divide between the immigrant population and the locals. The
Yeah.
divide is very it's more clearly seen, I feel, than in other places
Mm.
because it's especially Dubai is actually majority immigrants and expats compared to
Right.
locals.
Oh,
So that's
interesting.
Yes, so that's the other thing. So I think again the bad rap over there is that it's a very materialistic society, but and that there's nothing else to do there except go to the mall, which I spent I think 10 years busting that myth because because I found once I met my partner especially, but we found ways to connect with nature and go on hikes and do things that were adventurous in nature.
That's right. Everybody thinks of Dubai as these spectacularly huge buildings and these
Yeah,
enormous swimming pools and,
which it is.
helicopters. Yeah.
Which it has, I have to
Yeah.
say it has, but there are ways to live a very grounded, normal life if you choose
Mm.
to do that. There you won't be expelled for choosing to live differently, you know?
Yeah. That's a misnomer about Hong Kong, too, is that,
Mm.
it's something like 70% of Hong Kong is country parks.
Ooh.
Oh,
Wow,
yeah,
I did not know
exactly.
that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Everybody expects it
Yeah.
to be totally urban jungle, but in fact, it's a
Yes.
lot of it is just jungle, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, that's a fun, kind of thing to dispel. So, okay, and now we get to Portugal. And, like, what
Yes.
are some of the myths? I'll share with you a friend of mine before I moved here, a friend of mine who had come on a holiday,
Mm.
Australian lass, said to me that she was surprised because people, in terms of walking down the street, their expressions were not very welcoming. She
Mhm.
felt like she was getting, sort of a very cold look from people. But the
Okay.
minute she said hello, of course, there
Yeah.
was a smile. And
Mm.
I think that one of the things that stood out to me when I first came here, I went on one of those walking tours. And the young man who was Portuguese, who took us on the tour, said something that really touched me. And he said, you may notice that the expression on the face of many older people is one of seriousness, and they can sometimes look a bit grumpy. He said, "You,"
Yeah.
he said, "you have to remember what they lived through,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because Portugal was I got here
Mm.
the
Mm.
anniversary of the liberation."
So yes, we do have to remember that. I think you're so right about this, especially in the older generation, there is this sort of grumpiness. But
Mm.
I feel the minute you put in even the minimum effort of saying "bom dia" or, once you show that little bit of effort to connect, they really go out of their way to help you.
Often in season 1, most of my guests were closer to my age, but I thought it would be interesting to have younger people on this. So if you go back 30 years, you're gonna say I was 7 or something like that, but I think it's interesting to talk to younger people just about the changes that are in the world and also looking ahead to when they're older. So
Yeah.
Ruthie, that lovely, lovely character who ran the little shop in Stanley in Hong Kong. She was bursting with energy. And I think Ruthie probably was about 80, and she was climbing up ladders and rearranging things and always on the move.
Yeah.
And she was running her own business.
Yeah.
An independent older woman running her own business by herself. She had nobody else in that shop with her.
Yeah.
And you as a entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, when you project ahead, what do you see when I tell you that story of Ruthie?
I always aspire to that level of energy when when I am that age because it happened also when I was reading this book Ikigai and they talk about how in Japan, they don't like they pursue something as for a lifetime and they don't look at it as work and my work and my life, but sometimes some of them they take up this thing. It could be art or cooking or running a restaurant or something, and that's just what they do because it brings them joy and they could do it until the end of their life. And I
Mm,
always aspire to that.
mm.
So when I was reading the article and I could visualize this person, and I really think there is a special determination that Asian women do have. So, and I and
Yeah.
I I aspire to that.
I also make reference to my own grandmother, and, she was a tailor when she was young, and she worked in a little tailor shop. And this gives you a picture of what the life was. The ships would bring in the fabric, and the ladies would come in and choose the fabric, and then she would do the cutting and all of that. You know, she worked for a
Yeah,
lady who ran the shop. So she used to sew, and she made that. I still have that little beaver hat that she made for me. I brought it with
love
me
that.
here.
I love
S
that.
did you have conversations with your mother or with your grandmother, aunties, or anybody about the good old days or the bad old days or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also have a very strong motivational figure in our grandmother. Both my grandmothers, actually. Unfortunately, one of them is no more, but both of them have been such a big influence in all of our cousins. Like we're about 5 to 7 cousins, and yeah, definitely about the good old days. Yes, of course. On my paternal side, we actually come from a village, a farming village in South India, and so we hear so much about the ways of the village, and my grandmother's someone who actually still practices that, and I can say she's super healthy, and she's like, for her age, she's doing so well, because there are some practices which she's kind of.
We have to stop. You gotta double click on some of these practices. Share.
Sure, sure. I've never seen her eat anything processed in my entire life. I have never seen her crack into a bag of crisps or anything. I have not seen it with my eyes. She loves gardening. She loves like slow cooking. I remember when we were kids, we spent some time living with her as well. So she would be in the backyard, like doing. We have chutneys in India, which are
Oh.
like these ground spices and veggies together, and she would be doing them from scratch, like not even using an electric blender, because this texture and everything comes out.
Pestle and mortar.
Exactly, pestle and mortar, but the size like huge, gigantic, not like a tiny one, like big.
Yeah.
She has a. I remember sometimes she would even warm our bath water on like a wood fire, and things like that. So there are practices which, and sometimes I would even, like in India, we have this practice in the villages. It's very common, because toothpaste was not a thing at some point in our history, and so there are people who brush their teeth with a stick of neem. It's
Yes.
antibacterial, and it's no chemicals, nothing.
Neem
Completely
oil.
natural. Neem oil is also a thing, yes.
Yeah, I put
But for brushing, you use like like a stem of the tree. And we also have this Ayurvedic system of oil pulling, which
Mhm.
is you swish around a tablespoon of oil in your mouth first thing in the morning, and it's supposed to be naturally cleansing. And she, for years and years, I remember she did that.
Was it coconut
And
oil
yeah,
or
it's usually coconut oil. And then the same thing for her hair, by the way. She has waist length hair still at the age of nearly 90. Like, she has a long, luscious hair at that age. And it's all because of these practices. So,
well, listen, I'm just thinking what a blessing for a
yeah.
young woman of your age to have been able to experience things that go so far back.
Yes,
At not as
absolutely.
on a vacation
Mm.
in your
Yeah, as
life,
a
you know?
lifestyle. Yes,
Oh my
exactly.
gosh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. Okay, well, one other thing that to touch on with the column was this idea of friends as family, and I mentioned that my girlfriends and their husbands ended up being the closest things to aunties and uncles that my kids knew, and of course I have a brother, but he's 12 years older than I am, and he lived in another country.
Across there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they didn't see him. We didn't have Zoom in those days,
Mm,
right? So
mm.
the only time they would see him is if we were in the same place at the same time. So they're very close to him now, but not when they were growing up. And that family that grows sort of beautifully out of friendships. You know, I never had any sisters, and I got all of these sisters growing up through my girlfriends. So, is that any of that part of your experience living abroad?
Definitely, yes, because it's hard. The thing is, I've always grown up very close to my family, and so moving to another country meant that it's like you suddenly feel without those references, right? The emotional part of it aside, those references that you have, and like I said, like these pieces of other people's routines that you kind of bring into your own, and suddenly those
Yes.
go missing. So yeah, I mean, I have had friends who are much older than me who became aunt figures or older sister
Mm.
figures, or or friends who were much younger than me who I felt like an older sister to, because we're all like in Dubai. Everyone is far. It's not like some of our friends had families living there. Everyone is an expat.
Isn't that
So
interesting? I didn't realize
yeah,
that it's
yeah.
primarily an expat community.
Yeah, if you look at the figures, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's a
Wow.
majority expats. Yeah, and so everyone is has the same life experience. They're away from home. It's not far from India, though. It's only a 3.5 hour flight, but the experience is still that you're without that foundation. And so, I think the bonds I've seen, especially like I was working for an Indian corporate, and so we had a big Indian community within our workplace, and I think the connections you make are for that, at least for that time period that you're there. We celebrated Indian festivals together.
Right.
We kind of, if somebody's like, I had a friend who lost a parent during that time, so then you show up in that immediate moment because their brother and whoever it is that can be there is far away.
Far away.
So you then go in, and I've had exactly that. Like when I had a family crisis, I had a friend come in, like book the tickets, because your mind is not functional at that time. And so I feel like those, they're kind of stand-ins for your family for at
Yeah.
least for that period of time. And when people do move on and make a life in yet another country, that connection still stays. But
Yes.
I
And
feel
it's
like,
so much easier nowadays to
yes,
sustain those
yes,
long
exactly,
distance relationships. And
exactly.
what's striking me in this conversation is that we've been kind of blessed in living so far away from family and for me, childhood friends that I'm still in touch with, but we've had that distance. I think what you get is an appreciation for the importance of these friendships and a willingness and a joy and investment in nurturing those
Yeah,
relationships
yeah.
that you don't think about so much if it's just the same people you've always seen your whole life and you can kind of take it for granted. I feel like the friendships I've developed over a lifetime in Hong Kong and now the new ones that I've got blossoming here in Portugal are extremely precious to me. Yeah.
Yes. And I would also actually add something more to that. That yes, because it's kind of like you're on an island, and then the connections you make become super important, even just for your emotional health and survival.
Mm.
But I think for me, the other thing that happened was that some of my friendships back home even became more precious, because I felt like, oh my god, like that connection, I've never been able to replicate that
Yeah.
either. So I have a couple of friendships that have now been like maybe, I don't know, 15 years, 18 years. And I find them becoming more and more and more important as I'm, getting further and further from my home base. But that I've also had that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's running through my head? I was a Girl Scout when I was little, and there was a song that they taught us. Make new friends, but keep the
I've
old.
heard this.
One
Yeah.
is silver and the other's
Yeah.
gold, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of those golden friendships, Geraldine and her husband Bill are coming out to Portugal so that she said, I have to come out so that we can turn 70 together. We
Oh, I love
became
that.
friends in the second grade. Second
Oh
grade.
my God. I hope I have that.
Okay, listen, let's take a little break. And when we get back, I want to hear your story. Okay, now tell us a little bit about Avant-Green, because I took a look at the website and it's so interesting the way that you have championed this notion that creativity and sustainability can go hand in hand in the world of fashion.
Yes. So it's avant-green, which is kind like there's a concept in fashion which is avant-garde, which is, ahead of its time. And so for me, avant-green represents everything you need to do before you can call yourself green. And so it's that journey that is important and the steps you take in that journey. And that's what matters. The passion for it comes from a few things. So the first thing is because I come from India, and India is the manufacturing hub for a lot of the West. So
Yes.
the direct consequences of that are felt there. Like I've been on factory floors, I've seen the working conditions. You also see the emissions and the water pollution and all of that. Like it's firsthand. And so I think throughout my career, it was at the back of my mind, but I was just enjoying what I did so much that it never came to the forefront. But now that it is, I'm trying to, like you said, like really avant-green for me is an exploration of how can we get creativity to be seen through the lens of circularity and sustainability.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, fashion is it's an artistic means of expression, and this is something designers question all the time. How do we make this interesting? How do we make this still something desirable while respecting, planetary boundaries and trying to do something that uses resources efficiently?
Okay, can you give us what's an international fashion brand that you feel has made a good connection between creativity and sustainability?
There are some that I really admire which come out of India. I'll
Mhm.
mention one from India and one internationally. There's one that is called Oshadi, which comes out of India,
Mhm.
and they look a lot into cultural textiles from India, and they actually measure every aspect of their impact. If you go on their website, they know how many liters of water they've saved, how many women they've employed, and how much of their carbon footprint they've managed to
Mm.
optimize. That is one I look to a lot for inspiration. So they tap into Indian textiles and give it a very modern and global aesthetic, which I really
Mm.
love. And the fact that they're able to communicate their impact so clearly is amazing to me. And they are considered one of the front runners with sustainability in Indian fashion. Globally, one of the labels I look up to a lot is Stella McCartney.
Ah.
It's from the UK. The thing I love about them is that they are the first ones to adapt any new material innovation, and they do it all. Like every season, it's a new one. So when mushroom leather started coming out, they were the first ones. There's this new brand of like vegan fur. Like so a fur look-alike but sourced from plant-based materials. They're always trying new things. Unfortunately, because they are kind of at the higher end of the fashion spectrum, it doesn't always filter down to the mass market. It's not
Right.
as affordable. But
Yeah.
what I do love about them is that they champion this, and
Yeah.
so other designers and other brands in the market could be inspired from it.
Right. Okay,
So
one last question here. One, what could a listener do to go back and look at their closet and say, this is something I could do that would allow me to feel like I'm making the most of what I've got and not wasting anything?
I was at
Mm.
an event where there were a couple of stylists who encourage sustainability. And what I learned from them was that the first thing we as consumers can do is know ourselves. Because as women, we're sold, a spectrum of trends, and a lot of the beauty and fashion industry feeds off of our insecurities as well, especially as women. And so it would be really great for us to know ourselves a little better. And so then we're not attracted to every passing trend. I think the problem in fashion is because, I mean, every few months the trends change. And so we feel this pressure to keep up with those trends. But instead of that, if we just felt like already confident to begin with, and there's a difference between being stylish and just being trendy, knowing, appreciating that difference, I think can help us use what we have a bit more creatively.
That's a wonderful quote. The difference between being stylish and being trendy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back and hear your story. All righty. What word, what idea, what situation out of that column brought a memory of your own to the surface?
So many. Well, the most immediate one would be that about a year and a half ago, I lost my mom,
Oh.
unfortunately, to a long-term disease. But I think this, when you mention the hands of your mom, it was something that struck out to me very much because in the last months of my mom's life with her disease, she had a lung problem, so she was quite frail and weak. But the grip she had with her hands, like sometimes I would be kind of, walking, like leaving the room to get something, and she would want to call me back, and her like she would pull me back, and I'm like, how is she able to do that? Like, how does she have this insane strength? Because she was quite debilitated
Mm.
by this condition. And when you were talking about, the wrinkled hands of your mother, I remembered that, and it made me smile because I was like, seriously, how did she do that?
Ye
This thought of wrinkled hands, it always also reminds me of both my grandmothers. They were both
mm,
very inspirational in my life.
mm.
My maternal grandmother had this, she was actually a PhD in nuclear physics. She was the head of department of physics in the local university in her town. She was very career focused, but when it came to, the grandkids, she would be going out of her way to, when we were there for summer vacations, cooking us the best things. And I remember she always had a shaky hand, and I still remember her pouring out, milk with chocolate for us with that. And I used to be like, should I step in? Should I
Yeah.
like? But I remember just going through with it, like without a care. Uh, and
Oh.
and similarly with my other grandmother, I remember like we would wake up early in the morning to get ready for school, and she would have our milk prepped. And in India, I don't know if you've ever seen videos of this, but we have this practice of cooling the drink we're going to by pouring it through two glasses. And I remember her so vividly doing that every single morning, not knowing that what the reason is. I had no clue.
Right.
It's like, what? Why is she doing that? I don't get it, but okay, And
Yeah.
now when I look now, sometimes I teach my husband to do that with the coffee when we go to an Indian restaurant, and it always takes me back to that. So
Wow.
there was this moment in the article when you mentioned, your mother's wrinkled hands with the thin veins, and that really reminds me of all of these women, and the efforts they've made, and their role in my life. So
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. You've got a long way to go before this is part of your story. But I got a little choked up when I listened to it again because I realized that my grandmother's hands became my mother's hands, and my mother's hands are now mine. I've
Yeah,
got the little stone, the little brown stone
yeah,
marks and the little caterpillar
yeah,
veins on the top of my
yeah,
hands,
yeah,
and that's just part of the nature and I think part of the beauty of getting older is
yeah,
that, I I they have not figured out yet how to Botox your hands. Your hands will be the giveaway, and
yeah.
I
I
think
love
that's
that.
beautiful. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
wonderful.
true. Yeah.
Anyway, listen, my dear, thank you so much for being a guest on The View from Abroad. Let me plug the website again because I think it's fascinating. I took a look at it, and there are so many different things that you're doing with clients and tips that you've got for all of us. It's wonderful. So it's www.avantgreen.com. So that's AVANT green.com. And I would encourage you to go and have a look at that. If you are enjoying this podcast, do me a solid. Please take a minute to follow, review, comment, and share with your friends if you think they might enjoy it. And whatever life is bringing you at the moment. Be sustainable in both your lifestyle and also your emotions. I mean, energy is
Yeah.
something that we have to be careful to take care of. So breathe all the time, come up slowly. And if you're worried about what's around the next corner, remember what my dear friend Geraldine from the second grade used to say to me. Hey, what if it's good?